What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review Virgin Punk Clockwork Girl, the latest anime from director Yasuomi Umetsu. And I'll go spoiler-free initially, but then I'll give you a verbal warning as well as a time code below before I go into any plot-specific details. In any case, let me get to the good news first, because throughout the entirety of this flick's very short running time, this was by far the most fun I've had in the movie theater all year. It's insanely violent, it's hyper-stylized, it's relentless in its pacing, but here's the bad news. It only lasted 35 minutes. It's technically a short film, and Clockwork Girl is just part one, while the series is called Virgin Punk.
懸賞金を受け取る条件。違法相馬ディア指名手配犯の脳を警察に持ち込む。ターゲットの生死は不問。
And I should have known this was too good to be true as I was watching it, but I'll take 35 amazing minutes over a 2-hour snooze fest like most Hollywood franchise movies these days. And luckily, they padded the runtime with a little behind-the-scenes footage interviewing the director as well as the producer. But I could definitely feel the frustration from the audience after the movie was over. They were confused and they definitely wanted more. And I get it. I wanted to see more as well, but at least the screening went great. The audience was on their best behavior in spite of the venue being right in the heart of Times Square, which is usually a disaster in terms of audience behavior. And if this experience had been feature-length, it would have been a strong contender for my favorite movie all year long. But if you're wondering what the concept is, I'll do the best that I can with broad strokes, but I found the description over on IMDb to be woefully inadequate. But the story takes place about 100 years in the future, and it's an environment where a lot of people have cybernetic implants, like hands that can turn into guns or an eye that can take pictures. And there's a character by the name of Ubu Kamigori, who is a young, brilliant engineer, and she's working on robots and synthetic beings and that sort of thing. But while she's studying there, her school comes under attack by a bunch of cybernetic assassins, bringing her to the attention of the villainous Mr. Elegance. When I say he's a villain, he's a real villain. He's not one of those idiotic, misunderstood victims that we see in American movies. Not someone you need to feel sorry for. He is corrupt and evil and fucked up and perverted to the core of his soul. And let me underline the word perverted. He is a disturbed, like depraved individual in many ways, and he immediately takes an interest in the young Ubu. Fast forward 10 years later, he finds a way basically to wreak havoc upon her body without destroying any of her organs, and he places her brain inside one of these cybernetic creatures, or what, synthetic, or whatever you want to call it, and then he forces her to work for him as an assassin. And basically the first episode is all about her first mission, where she's learning how to use her technology in her body and basically trying to figure out when and if and how can she either get revenge upon Mr. Elegance or get away from him or get free from him. But it is so balls to the wall and so insane and so aggressive. And the fight choreography in this first episode is just deliriously entertaining, where I was like, I cannot believe how intoxicating it is to watch this action unfold.
あんたの懸賞金。
But for those of you out there who are already familiar with the work of director Yasuomi Umetsu, none of this should come as any surprise, because it's very reminiscent of some of his earlier movies, his very notorious movies. If you look up any video on YouTube, like top 10 most controversial anime ever made, some of his movies will always make the cut until the end of time, because he directed Kite and Mezzo Forte, and I called it Kite for many, many years because I'm an uncivilized Western barbarian, but I learned recently you pronounce it Kite. It's 2 syllables. But holy shit, the first time I saw Kite, I didn't realize I was watching the censored version. I was like, oh, well, that's a pretty hardcore, graphic, violent, animated movie. And like Virgin Punk Clockwork Girl, it's divided into 2 parts. I don't know how many parts Virgin Punk is going to have, but in any case, it's divided into like half-hour bite-sized chunks. But it's so insane and so hardcore that Quentin Tarantino showed it to the actress who was hired to play, Chiaki Kuriyama, when she was playing Gogo Yubari in the first Kill Bill movie. He basically showed her Kite and said, like, study this girl. This is basically what I want you to be. Young and innocent, but also hell on wheels and just dismembering folks left and right. But when I first saw Kite, I was like, all right, well, it's really violent, but I don't get what the controversy is. And then I got my hands on the uncut Kite. And like, I've seen a lot of crazy shit in my time on this planet in terms of kind of wild, depraved, scandalous, controversial film and television. Kite takes you right up to the edge of the abyss and allows you to look into it. And you're like, ooh, I don't really like the view, because if you gaze into the abyss also gazes into you. And then you have to kind of take a few steps back. Kite is basically where I draw the line. I'm like, I don't want to go any further than Kite. But Mezzo Forte It's fucking insane as well. As it says here, warning, absolutely not for children, uncut and uncensored. And those warnings are absolutely accurate. Unless you're 30. And like the cinematic equivalent of like a bottle of like just like straight vodka. Like if that's the kind of movie experience you want, like something that's as insane as humanly possible, then his early movies will be right up your alley. And this new show, or I don't even know if you could call it a show or maybe it's a short film, but it's going to have a part 2 in the near future. It has all the trappings and all the ingredients of the earlier movies, maybe not quite as shocking, but much more polished. The visuals, the aesthetic, just the overall animation in this new flick. You can tell he had a much bigger budget, a lot bigger crew, a lot more time to get it right. And I was just transfixed. I've been watching a lot of anime recently, but a lot of anime is just made for TV, and it's kind of cheap and formulaic and disposable. Fun as hell to watch, but it's definitely kind of cookie cutter and it's very TV in its execution. This first episode, Jesus Christ. I mean, like I said, if it had been a feature film, an hour and a half, 2 hours long, it would be by far my favorite movie that I've seen in 2025. But if you're wondering about the team that Yasuomi Umetsu assembled for this production, here's some information from Wikipedia. Virgin Punk is an original anime film series created by Yasuomi Umetsu and animation production studio Shaft. It is directed by and features character designs by Umetsu, with Yuji Hanjo and Yuki Funagakure serving as art directors, Yuya Takahashi writing film scripts, and Yoshiaki Dewa composing the music. The first part, Clockwork Girl, was given a limited release starting June 27th, 2025. And they're obviously talking about the Japanese release date, not the US release date. But before the movie started, when they're showing all the behind-the-scenes footage, I can't remember if it was the producer or a representative from the company Shaft, but one of them said, when we brought on Umetsu to direct this movie, we told him we want like the pure, uncompromised, undiluted Umetsu experience, and I would argue that he gave it to them. But from what I've seen so far, I don't think Virgin Punk is going to be as shocking. I think it'll be much more popular because it's so polished and so slick and so gorgeous, and the action is just so satisfying. But I don't think when people are going to need to rearrange their top 10 most controversial animated movies from Japan lists or anything like that. And speaking of which, there are a lot of people out there who have those lists. The most shocking one that I've ever seen, hang on, I just want to get the name absolutely correct. The most shocking that I've ever seen by far is Midori from 1992, which is hard to find, but I think you can find it on the Internet Archive. But there are plenty of like outlandish, crazy animated movies out there, stuff like Rotsuki Doji, the Legend of the Overfiend. But it's so over the top and so ridiculous. You can't be but so offended by it. You're like, oh my God, this is just complete and total bedlam and insanity, but it doesn't really like disturb like the inner parts of your soul. Midori will absolutely disturb parts of your soul, and Kite will disturb parts of your soul. So I'm sure there are plenty of other strong contenders out there, and there's plenty of like really, really shocking kick-ass animation that's come from Japan, but very few of it makes you feel deeply unsettled while you're watching it. And so, but those movies are out there. I don't think that Virgin Punk Clockwork Girl is going to make those lists, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if it makes a lot of top 10 lists for the year, because this year, when it comes to genre entertainment in America, we've had some good horror movies, but when it comes to like science fiction or fantasy or superheroes or westerns or cops and robbers or any traditional genre storytelling that you care to mention, I've been very unsatisfied and unimpressed by a lot of the offerings this year. And so don't be surprised when I do my top 10 list for the year if there are 3 animated movies from Japan on the list, because Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba Infinity Castle was a 2.5-hour movie, fucking awesome. And then Chainsaw Man the movie Reze Arc was also fucking awesome, and it's been relieved to see how wildly popular it's been. And I might just have to throw in Virgin Punk because it's technically a short film, not a TV show, and that's a movie as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, my top 10 list for 2025. I probably have seen more movies in 2025, more new releases than any other year in my life, which might have been a mistake. Maybe I've seen too many movies, but I'm trying to do a good job of just getting like a broad overview of where we stand in terms of the overall competitive landscape with international cinema. I've definitely seen one too many Hollywood movies where I was just like, oh, like, are we still fucking doing this? Do I still have to keep watching these? At least we're getting this crazy late in the year surge where suddenly Japan is giving us all sorts of interesting offerings. So keep the floodgates open. And the good news is there's one more coming our way. Jujutsu Kaisen is coming in December, and I'm very excited for that. But I think that's as far as I can go without offering some spoiler-like commentary. So if you don't want any spoilers, bail out now. 3, 2, 1. Last warning, but we need to talk a little bit about the villain in this, because the villain, while he's not as shocking as the villain from Kite, he's still pretty fucked up. I mean, they call it a Lolita complex in the movie because he's got a thing for underage girls, and he basically murders a woman because she is aged out of the age group that he prefers, and then like removed her brain and put her in an android body that will never age and never get beyond the age that he likes. And for a lot of people, I mean, I feel like I'm going to get fucking suspended from YouTube even describing the plot. But for a lot of people, they're going to be like, this is not for me and certainly not for kids. And yes, this movie is definitely not for children, like I said before. Unless you are an adult who likes strong drink and likes hardcore graphic experiences, this is not the direct for you. And if you don't like really, really hardcore graphic content, by all means, go watch Demon Slayer. Like, Demon Slayer has got action, and it's got gore, and it's got demons, but it's a very uplifting, very positive, inspirational tale of good versus evil, and I feel like you can watch it at any age, whether you're 5 or 85. Demon Slayer's out there. I think it's got 63 episodes, followed by a feature film. There's tons of it to watch. I've seen it all twice. Fucking rules, but it's a very different kind of storytelling experience from Virgin Punk Clockwork Girl. Virgin Punk Clockwork Girl is for people where they're like, what would happen if you took Ghost in the Shell and combined it with Kite? That's the best way I can pitch it. Ghost in the Shell meets Kite, where you still got the android body who's capable of kicking all kinds of ass, but it looks like a young girl. And it's gory, and it's shocking, and you can tell she's going to be a bad motherfucker because she was already a genius-level engineer as a teenager. By the time she's in her 20s, she's a hardcore hunter-killer / bounty hunter. And I love the world that they're creating where you have all these independent operators competing for all the available bounties, because there are a lot of psychotic people on the loose who maybe they've got like a machine gun for an arm, or maybe they've got like something that gives them a little bit of an advantage or an edge, but you have a lot of dumb fucking criminals out there who are incredibly dangerous, and they need to be put out of their misery. And so you have all these bounty hunters competing for the bounties and basically trying to beat them to the job and kill them before the other person can snag it. And that environment is really exciting to see as it unfolds. And I was just blown away by how much world building Umetsu was able to indulge in just a scant 35-minute running time. And as far as some of the more libidinous elements of this movie are concerned, I'll say this. There's nudity, but there's none of the sexual violence that you see in Kite. I mean, Kite, like I said, it takes you right up to the edge of the abyss, which is about as far as just about anybody would ever want to go, unless you deserve to be locked away somewhere, like someone out of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Kite is much more savage and much more disgusting and depraved in a lot of ways. Virgin Punk Clockwork Girl just has a lot of female characters who might be like washing off after combat in a shower, so you'll see them naked and that sort of thing. So it's not nearly as controversial as some of his earlier work. But in comparison to a lot of other movies and shows being made in 2025, it'll appear wildly controversial. Just controversial for those people who are unfamiliar with a lot of animated movies that came out in the 80s and 90s, where there was just it was just a fucking free-for-all. Because when you go back and watch stuff like Fist of the North Star, you're just like, oh my lord, how did anybody ever make this stuff? Or Golgo 13, The Professional, or Wicked City, or Ninja Scroll. Just those movies were completely and totally fearless, is the best word I can use. They just had this completely and totally uncompromising, completely relentless purity of vision by those storytellers. And who knows if an era like that will ever come again. But I'm incredibly excited to see just how popular anime appears to be becoming in recent years. Thanks to Crunchyroll, which is rapidly becoming the streaming service that I go to the most. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of wild shows to be discovered there. And every night I'll watch like 1 or 2 episodes of different shows. And I'm getting caught up on Jujutsu Kaisen, which I'm about halfway through. But the fact that this movie was able to open in around 9 or 10 theaters in New York, and I'd say my theater was like 2/3 full, that's an incredibly encouraging sign. What it shows me is that while not everybody is going to want to have an alternative to Hollywood product. There are enough people out there where they are bored to tears by, Alien, Predator, Marvel, DC, Jurassic World, but like any franchise you care to mention that's being cranked up by Hollywood. I have a dismissive way of looking at a lot of those franchises, basically saying it's like comparing like Burger King Whoppers to like McDonald's Big Macs and that sort of thing. But these days, even a lot of those franchises, they no longer even taste like Big Macs or Whoppers. They taste like the grease inside the cardboard container after the burger has been eaten, where you're licking the scraps, but there's no flavor left. There's nothing there because they just keep remaking the same movie over and over and over again. I'm ready for some fresh, exciting experiences, some movies and shows that are unpredictable, that take me places I've never been before. So for that, Virgin Punk Clockwork Girl was precisely what the doctor ordered, and as somebody who often finds themselves just like, pulling out my imaginary hair by the roots, just in complete and total boredom by a lot of the offerings on display in America, I was just, for 35 minutes, for a brief and shining moment, just a diehard movie fan again, and so for that, I am very grateful. But I'll just close on this. When in the hell can we expect to see part 2? I want to see part 2 right now. The dubbed version in English is coming out in a couple days. I like to watch all my Japanese animated movies in Japanese, but pick your poison. Some people just refuse to watch Japanese movies in Japanese. I don't know why, but I much prefer to get the full Japanese flavor and the full Japanese performances by the actors. But when I discovered Mezzo Forte and Kite, parts 1 and 2 were already available on both, so I didn't have to wait. I guess I'll have to go through IMDb and see what other productions he worked on that maybe can kind of scratch that itch while I wait for part 2. But I just hope that this first part will do well and that they will, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, get part 2 finished as quickly as humanly possible. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. What anime might be coming out in 2026 that people are excited about? Because I'm aware of Jujutsu Kaisen, like one of the movies that's coming out in December. Beyond that, I really have no idea what to expect in 2026. But it seems like this is a trend that is accelerating, and I'm here for all the above. So thanks again for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Please consider liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell. And if you have some good anime recommendations to scratch my itch in the short term, especially series that might be expecting movies in the near future, like Solo Leveling. I know they're working on a movie for Solo Leveling, which I also started watching recently, which I've been thoroughly enjoying. So yeah, I've got a lot of catching up to do, but I'm just relieved to have some entertainment options where I'm excited about the future as opposed to dreading what the future might hold. But at this point, I'm starting to repeat myself, so I'm going to sign off. Thanks again for watching, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.